A wealthy woman humiliates a cleaning lady in front of a crowd just to satisfy her own ego. When a stranger with his German Shepherd dog walks by, all warnings become meaningless. She thinks her status and position will prevail. But she doesn't know she's up against a former Navy SEAL K-9, ready to expose every secret her empire was built on. What begins as a simple act of kindness turns into a war for justice. And by the end, one woman, one soldier, and two brave dogs will change an entire city forever. Before we begin, please let me know where you're watching from. Leave a comment below. A warm spring evening settled over downtown Savannah, soft golden light washing across old brick walls, while a jasmine-scented breeze drifted through the narrow streets. Ethan Cole walked steadily along the sidewalk, his movements quiet and deliberate, the kind of calm precision carved by years of combat. His lean, muscular frame fit easily into a charcoal Henley and worn tactical pants, and though he tried to blend into civilian life, his posture gave him away. Straight spine, squared shoulders, and eyes that scanned everything. Those eyes, a piercing storm gray, carried the weight of distant battles and the quiet ache of a man trying to breathe in a gentler world. Ranger, the German Shepherd at Ethan's left heel, padded forward with disciplined elegance. At 5 years old, the dog's thick sable coat gleamed under the city lights, and his amber eyes burned with obedience and sharp awareness. Scars hidden beneath his fur spoke of past missions, IED sweeps, night raids, moments where he had saved Ethan's life, and yet he walked without aggression, only purpose. Ranger wasn't just a dog. He was Ethan's anchor, a guardian molded by loyalty and survival. For Ethan, Savannah had become a temporary refuge. 2 months of trying to relearn ordinary rhythms, of forcing himself to hear laughter without expecting explosions, of lying awake some nights with his pulse racing for reasons he could not name. Healing was never linear. Ranger often sensed his spiraling thoughts and would press close, grounding him back into the present. That was why these evening walks mattered. Each step was an act of reclaiming peace, however fragile. As they passed the golden glow of Marigold Prime, the city's most luxurious restaurant, Ranger suddenly stiffened. His ears shot forward, body rigid. Ethan halted instantly. Ranger only froze like that when sensing distress or danger. Ethan focused, listening. The laughter from inside the restaurant faded beneath a sharp gasp and the clatter of a metal bucket behind the building. Instinct, not impulse, guided Ethan as he turned the corner, Ranger glued to his thigh. Behind the restaurant stood a slim young woman in a loose, slightly stained janitorial uniform, her body curled protectively around a tiny German Shepherd puppy. She couldn't have been more than 21. Her long brown hair clung to her flushed cheeks in messy strands, and exhaustion clung to her like a second skin. Her frame was thin, not by choice, but by struggle. Yet her eyes, though wet with fear, carried a soft resilience. The puppy in her arms, barely 8 weeks old, trembled violently. His fur was fluffy, still in that unruly puppy stage, tan and black without clear markings yet. His little ears flopped unevenly. He pressed deeper into her chest, whimpering. Before her stood Victoria Hale, the infamous owner of a dominant restaurant empire. Victoria was in her late 40s, statuesque, poised, and immaculate. Her ash-blonde bob framed her angular cheekbones, and her white tailored suit hugged her body with the precision of custom design. Diamonds at her ears sparkled almost as sharply as the contempt in her cold blue eyes. A limited edition designer handbag, cream leather with gold accents, sat at her feet, dotted with droplets of dirty mop water. Around them, several diners and staff lingered awkwardly, unsure whether to watch or escape. Victoria's voice sliced through the warm air like broken glass. "Do you realize what you've done?" she screeched, lifting the handbag for all to see. "This is a limited edition piece worth more than you'll make in a decade." Her lips, painted a fierce crimson, twisted further as the crowd murmured. The severity of her rage contrasted almost theatrically with the tiny droplets of water on the bag. But humiliation, not damage, was the true fuel of her fury. The young woman, Lily, clutched the puppy tighter, her voice breaking as she tried to explain. "I'm so sorry. The cartwheel got caught. I didn't mean to—" Milo, the puppy, yelped at the sharpness in her voice, forcing Lily to stifle a sob. She stepped back instinctively, desperate to shrink out of sight. But Victoria advanced on her like a storm, relishing the power imbalance. "You didn't mean," Victoria repeated with venom. "Your incompetence is not my problem. You're fired immediately." She pointed toward the crowd as if they were a courtroom. "Let it be known she damaged my handbag. She will never work for me or for anyone who respects quality and professionalism." The words hit Lily like physical strikes, her shoulders folding inward, her breath shuddering as she stared at the ground. Something old and familiar stirred in Ethan's chest, a cold clarity reserved for moments when someone vulnerable was being crushed. He stepped forward, boots steady on the pavement. Ranger followed, the low rumble in his throat soft but unmistakable. The remaining crowd parted slightly, sensing a shift. Ethan's voice came out calm, controlled, unmistakably authoritative. "That's enough." Victoria turned sharply, glaring at Ethan with a practiced arrogance reserved for those she believed beneath her. Seeing a tall, broad-shouldered man with a soldier's bearing seemed to irritate her further. "Who are you?" she demanded. "This is none of your concern." Ethan didn't flinch. "I'm someone asking you to stop humiliating her." His tone lacked aggression. It was simply firm, the way a mountain stands firm against the wind. Lily lifted her gaze toward him for the first time, eyes shimmering with disbelief. Someone was standing up for her. Victoria scoffed, stepping closer, expensive perfume swirling around her like a weapon. "She ruined a $12,000 handbag. I think I have every right to be upset." "You have the right to frustration," Ethan replied evenly. "Not cruelty." Ranger shifted his weight subtly, alert but controlled. Milo let out a scared whine, burying his face against Lily's collarbone. Victoria's face flushed a deeper red, her facade cracking under Ethan's calm defiance. Lily trembled as Ethan crouched slightly to her eye level. "Are you hurt?" he asked gently. Her voice wavered. No, just scared. My mom is sick. I can't lose this job. I can't afford—" Her voice collapsed into silence, shame crawling across her cheeks. She hugged Milo tighter, as though shielding him from the world that was crushing her. Victoria pointed directly at Ethan, fury radiating from her. "If you interfere, you make an enemy of me. I can make people disappear from this city." Ethan stood fully, casting a long shadow across the alley. "Ma'am, I've survived worse enemies." His voice held no threat, only truth. Victoria blinked, momentarily thrown off by his composure. With a dramatic whirl of her designer heels, Victoria barked, "Get out of my sight, girl. You're done." She stalked away, the onlookers slowly dispersing as though retreating from a collapsing structure. Silence settled. Lily remained frozen, shoulders shaking, Milo whimpering softly in her arms. Ranger stepped forward and pressed his head gently against Lily's knee, offering quiet comfort in the way only a trained K9 could. The gesture broke whatever strength Lily had left. Tears spilled, soft and helpless. Ethan rested a steady hand on her back, grounding her. "You're not alone," he murmured. Lily looked up, voice trembling. "Why? Why help me?" Ethan held her gaze, his expression softening. "Because someone should." Lily swallowed her grief, clutching Milo. "She said no one will hire me again. My mom, she needs medication. Her voice trembled like a rope about to snap. Ethan felt the old instinct bloom. Protect, defend, stand between harm and the helpless. "You don't have to face this alone," he said quietly. Lily stared at him, searching for sincerity. "Do you really think there's anything we can do?" Ethan glanced toward the direction Victoria disappeared, his jaw tightening with quiet resolve. "Yes, and I'll help you. That's a promise." The evening breeze brushed past again, stirring jasmine through the alley as though the city itself exhaled. Lily stood beside Ethan and Ranger, fear still present, but no longer suffocating. Ethan knew in his bones that this moment wasn't coincidence, it was a call to action. And for a man like him, a mission was never ignored. The warm hush of evening had faded by the time Ethan walked Lily home, the city street lamps flickering across cracked pavement, as though unsure whether to illuminate her despair or his rising resolve. Lily kept Milo tucked beneath her chin, the pup shivering with exhaustion. Though she tried to walk steadily, her thin frame quivered under the weight of the day. Her long brown hair, still damp from tears, clung to her temples. Ethan watched her quietly, aware that everything about her, her hunched shoulders, her cautious footsteps, spoke of a life lived on the edge of collapse. Ranger walked on her opposite side, forming a silent, protective triangle around her. At Lily's small apartment building, a fading yellow structure sagging under humidity and time, Ethan saw the cruel imprint of poverty stamped along every cracked stair. Inside, the hallway smelled faintly of bleach and stale bread. Lily unlocked her door with trembling fingers. She did not invite him in. Out of respect, Ethan stayed at the threshold. But he saw enough. A tiny living room with thrift store furniture, a stack of medical bills on a crooked table, and the quiet, persistent beeping of an oxygen machine from the back bedroom. Lily exhaled shakily, shame and worry knotting her voice. "My mom. She's been worse lately. That's why I took double shifts." She avoided Ethan's eyes. Victoria knew. She still... The sentence withered. Milo whined and licked her chin, trying to lighten her sorrow. Ethan rested his hand briefly on the doorframe, offering steady calm. "Get some rest tonight. Tomorrow, we start fixing this." Morning arrived, cloaked in gray clouds, signaling an oncoming storm. Ethan returned by sunrise with Ranger, who trotted ahead with alert purpose. Lily opened the door with tired eyes, but cleaner resolve, her ponytail neater, her breath steadier. Milo, though still small, bounded forward with newfound boldness, tail twitching. Ethan noted the subtle shift, pain softened by hope. At a nearby cafe, Ethan sat across from Lily and unfolded the plan. She listened intently, fingers wrapped around a warm cup she couldn't afford. Ethan explained that Victoria's influence stretched farther than a single restaurant. She controlled hiring managers across dozens of locations. "She blacklisted you," Ethan said quietly, "but that doesn't mean she's untouchable." Lily stared into her drink. "People like her always win." Ethan shook his head. "Not always. Not when the truth is on our side." Ranger nudged her knee, sensing her rising panic. She took a shaky breath. If we can prove she's hurting employees, maybe someone will listen. Their first stop was Marigold Prime's backlot, where delivery trucks unloaded goods behind locked gates. Ethan scanned the area methodically, analyzing patterns, blind spots, and the timing of shipments. Ranger sniffed the air, then followed a scent trail toward a stack of sealed crates. They were unmarked, odd for restaurant supplies, and the chemical odor radiating from them made Ranger wrinkle his nose. Milo, still too young to understand danger, toddled after Ranger curiously until Lily scooped him up. "What is that smell?" she whispered. Ethan crouched near the crates, careful not to touch them. Not food, something else, something that shouldn't be here. Suspicion ignited in his mind like a fuse. Later that afternoon, Ethan sought out an old contact, Agent Mark Rivera, a retired FBI field operative now working consultancy. Mark was in his early 50s, rugged and broad-chested, with stormy black hair peppered in silver and a trimmed beard that sharpened his stern expression. Years of undercover work had carved caution into his features, but his dark eyes softened when he greeted Ethan. "Didn't think I'd see you again outside a war room," Mark said with a smirk. Ethan clasped his forearm. "I need intel. Quietly." Mark's brows lifted, his version of understanding. Over black coffee at his office, Ethan explained Victoria's behavior, the crates, the blacklisting, the exploitation. Mark leaned back, arms crossed. "Hale's empire has been flagged before. Wage suppression, ghost payrolls, but no hard evidence." He slid Ethan a secure contact card. "If you get anything, I'll make sure it's handled right." Ethan nodded, the weight of responsibility settling deeper. Back in the city, Lily guided Ethan to a modest storage room behind Marigold Prime. She still remembered her passcode, something Victoria likely forgot. Inside, dusty time cards, old schedules, and archived payroll documents cluttered metal shelves. Lily hesitated, running her fingers over the faded timestamp machine. "I used to enter everyone's hours. I knew the cooks who had kids, the waiters who worked double shifts. She cut everyone's pay whenever she felt like it." Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from remembering the unfairness she had silently endured. Ethan asked gently, "Did you ever take part in the cheating?" Lily snapped her head up, shocked. "No, I refused. That's why she moved me to cleaning." Ethan nodded. The truth only strengthened his conviction. They searched the shelves for hours. Ranger paced, sniffing boxes, alert to any sign of danger. Milo curled against Lily's leg, occasionally pawing at papers as if offering tiny assistance. Finally, Lily found it. A stack of tampered time logs, signed electronically by Victoria herself. Her breath hitched. She erased overtime, even whole shifts. Ethan inspected the documents, sensing the first solid piece of leverage. This is it. This is where we start. By evening, storm clouds gathered as they stepped back onto the street. Savannah's sky darkened to bruised violet, wind whipping Lily's hair as though stirring her fate itself. Ethan walked beside her, Ranger steady. Milo tucked securely in her arms. Lily looked up at him, hesitant hope flickering. "Do you really think this will work?" Ethan gazed at the approaching storm, jaw firm. "It has to. People like Victoria survive on fear. We're taking that away." Thunder rolled distantly, echoing the shifting tide. At Lily's apartment entrance, she paused. "Thank you for believing me." Ethan met her eyes. "I'm not believing you. I'm standing with you." Her expression tightened, as though fighting tears again, but this time they were born from relief. Milo nudged her chin affectionately. Ranger sat tall, guarding them as though guarding the first piece of justice in a long war. Night settled with sheets of rain, but Ethan's conviction only hardened. Victoria Hale might have money, influence, and cruelty on her side, but he had truth, purpose, and a girl who deserved far more than the hand life had dealt her. And as thunder cracked across the darkened sky, Ethan knew the real storm was just beginning. The night of Victoria Hale's charity gala shimmered beneath a dome of glass chandeliers and gold-plated railings, a lavish world far removed from the cracked sidewalks and flickering street lamps that shaped Lily's daily life. The event was held in the Hale Foundation Grand Hall, a towering building with marble pillars and velvet banners that made every guest feel small under its wealth and under Victoria's manufactured benevolence. Ethan arrived first, dressed in a tailored black security uniform he borrowed from a friend on the docks. The fit was sharp, outlining his broad shoulders and disciplined posture, while Ranger walked at his side wearing a service harness polished to a discreet shine. The German shepherd's alert amber eyes scanned every corner as though the ballroom were a tactical theater rather than a place of champagne and string quartets. Lily entered separately, disguised in a simple catering uniform, white shirt, black apron, hair neatly braided. The disguise softened her fragile appearance, transforming her into a quiet worker, blending into a sea of staff. Milo stayed hidden in a small carrier strapped under her tray cart, the pup occasionally poking his nose out, but staying silent as if sensing the severity of the mission. The gala glittered with women in jewel-crusted gowns and men in tuxedos exchanging hollow compliments, their smiles stretched thin over greed and ambition. Ethan positioned himself near a side hallway, signaling Lily with a subtle nod. She followed him toward the service elevators, the din of the ballroom fading. Her hands trembled slightly, but determination steadied her steps. She whispered, "If anyone recognizes me." Ethan cut her off gently. "They won't. And if they do, they'll have to get through me first." Ranger huffed quietly, as though seconding the promise. The service elevator opened to reveal Harvey Dunn, the building's head of maintenance. Harvey was a man in his late 40s with thinning copper hair, a paunchy stomach, and thick eyebrows that perpetually furrowed as if life confused him. He had oil-stained hands and wore a navy jumpsuit zipped halfway, revealing a faded undershirt. His personality leaned toward nervous helpfulness. Years of dealing with Hale's managers had carved timidity into his posture. Recognizing Ethan from a brief meeting earlier, he muttered, "Left wing's clear. Cameras looped for 4 minutes, maybe 5 if the old system doesn't freeze again." His voice carried the jitter of a man who knew too much and trusted too little. Ethan nodded, ushering Lily out as the elevator creaked upward. They moved through a quiet corridor with framed photos celebrating Victoria's public acts of charity. Photos that felt more like propaganda than philanthropy. Lily reached Victoria's private office door. The keypad glowed with sterile blue light. She inhaled deeply, her fingers hovering before typing the old passcode. Shock flickered across her face when the door clicked open. "She never changed it," Lily whispered. Ethan stepped inside first, Ranger sweeping the room with precise, controlled movements. The office was a shrine to arrogance, white marble flooring, a massive oak desk, and an enormous portrait of Victoria gazing down with cold superiority. Lily hurried to the desk, unlocking the laptop she once used. The screen resisted for a moment, then opened to the archives, files she wasn't supposed to have access to anymore. Ranger sat by the door, ears perked at every distant sound. Ethan kept watch while Lily navigated through folders that pulsed with memories she wished she could forget. Several documents appeared blank at first, but Lily dug deeper. She found fragments of deleted wage reports, contracts with illegal clauses, and spreadsheets showing manipulated payroll counts. Her breath quickened as she clicked open an email thread discussing an incoming shipment, coded language implying something other than food supplies. Ethan leaned over her shoulder, his jaw tightening as he whispered, "Record everything." He pulled out a small body cam, clicking it on as the screen reflected glow across his stern features. Suddenly, footsteps echoed down the hallway, sharp, purposeful. Harvey's shaky voice crackled through a small walkie-talkie he had handed Ethan earlier. "Someone's coming, not security, one of the managers." Lily's pulse raced. She whispered, "We need a few more seconds." Ethan stepped closer to the door, Ranger rising to stance beside him, muscles tensed like coiled steel. The door swung open moments later, revealing Marcia Tulliver, one of Victoria's top managers. Marcia was a sharp-featured woman in her mid-30s with slick black hair tied into a severe bun, dark brows that angled downward like blades, and a fitted suit that looked more like armor than clothing. She had a personality molded by ambition and cruelty, traits evidenced by the narrowness of her eyes as she froze at the sight of Lily. Her voice was icy. "What are you doing here?" Ethan moved quickly, stepping between them, his presence towering. "We were told to collect the donation ledgers," he lied smoothly. Marcia's gaze flickered to Ranger, then back to Ethan, suspicion sharpening. Before confrontation escalated, a muffled radio call came through Marcia's earpiece. "Victoria is on her way to the office." Marcia spun around, her heels clacking sharply as she ran to meet the incoming storm. Ethan whispered urgently, "Time to go." Lily shut down the laptop, stuffing the USB copy into her apron. Ranger nudged them toward the side corridor, but Victoria arrived faster than expected. The hallway filled with the commanding click of expensive heels. Victoria Hale emerged in a dazzling gold gown, her tall frame rigid with authority. Her auburn hair was swept back in waves that framed a face carved from ice, sharp. Cheekbones, immaculate red lipstick, and eyes that held no humanity. Behind her came two private guards, broad men with buzz cuts, dark suits, and expressions carved from stone. Victoria's voice cut through the hall. "Tell me you caught the little rat." Marcia bowed her head. "I saw her. She ran this way." Victoria removed her diamond bracelet, handing it to a guard with terrifying calm. "Bring me the laptop. I'll handle her myself." Lily pressed closer to Ethan as Victoria approached. Ethan's body locked into protective stance, Ranger baring his teeth silently. The guard stepped forward, but Ranger growled, a deep, resonant warning that froze them momentarily. Just then, the corridor exploded into movement. Agents in dark suits poured in from the gala entrance, FBI agents responding to Ethan's earlier tip about suspicious activity. Their commanding officer, Agent Claire Monroe, a tall woman in her 40s with sharp gray eyes and short curled hair, raised her badge and shouted, "Federal agents, step aside!" Claire was known for her uncompromising integrity, a trait that radiated from her firm posture and controlled voice. Victoria turned pale beneath her makeup. "This is a misunderstanding," she hissed, but the FBI had already formed a perimeter around her. Claire's cold reply sealed her fate. "You've been on our radar for months. Tonight, you made our job easier." Ethan grabbed Lily's hand, guiding her through the chaos, while Rangers shielded their escape path. Milo poked his head from the carrier, letting out an oblivious tiny bark that softened the high-tension moment just for a beat. Outside, the night air was cool, carrying hints of the ocean. Lily exhaled shakily, tears gathering as the weight of survival and hope collided inside her. Ethan placed a grounding hand on her shoulder. "You're safe now, and she won't hurt anyone else." Lily nodded, clutching Milo as Ranger leaned against Ethan's leg, the battle-worn soldier and his loyal partner finally seeing a crack of dawn in the darkness of corruption. The wind sharpened as dusk settled over the Wyoming backcountry, its cold breath sweeping across the pines like a warning whispered through the forest. Jack Mercer stood outside the remote research station, listening to the shifting hush of the tree line. Shadow sat at his heel, alert, muscles tight beneath his dark coat, ears pricked toward the ridgeline as if the night carried a message only he could hear. Jack trusted Shadow's instincts more than any encrypted device, and tonight the dog was uneasy. Inside, Emily Carter packed medical supplies with precise, anxious hands. Her petite frame trembled slightly, though her eyes, soft hazel flecked with gold, held determination. She was not a soldier, but hardship had carved steel inside her. Emily had grown up in a rough Detroit neighborhood with a mother who worked double shifts and a father lost to an unsolved shooting, shaping her into someone who quietly fought for every life she encountered. Now she carried that same resolve into this strange war she'd been thrust into. Jack stepped back into the room. His boots were silent on the concrete floor, but his presence seemed to fill the space. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a face cut from stone and lined by the ghosts of missions the world would never know. Stubble shadowed his jaw. Exhaustion shadowed his eyes. "Shadow's picking up movement," he said. "2 signatures, maybe 3. Staying low." His voice held that calm edge, the kind men developed when fear had been burned out of them long ago. Emily tightened the straps of her backpack. "They found us already?" she breathed. Jack nodded. "The broker doesn't wait. He reacts fast when he senses a leak." A sudden growl rose from Shadow's throat, low, vibrating, dangerous. Jack immediately killed the lights, pulling Emily down behind the metal table as a faint crunching of snow approached the building's eastern side. The first shot cracked through the night like lightning. A window burst, scattering glass across the floor. Jack moved instantly, positioning himself between Emily and the threat. Shadow leapt forward, barking fiercely, his silhouette backlit by moonlight slicing through the shattered pane. The attackers were fast, trained, but they underestimated the terrain. Shadow lunged through the broken window with explosive power, a muffled shout, then snow churned as the dog drove one of the intruders into the ground. Jack pulled Emily through a side exit, their breaths steaming in the winter air as a second shooter fired from the tree line. Bullets tore bark from a pine only inches from Emily's shoulder. Jack shoved her behind a boulder, then ducked beside her, his pulse steady despite the chaos. Shadow bounded back toward them moments later, a shallow cut across his shoulder, but fire in his eyes. Jack checked the wound quickly. "You're good," he whispered. Shadow pressed his head into Jack's hand, the gesture saying more than words could. They fled through a narrow ravine, guided entirely by Shadow's instincts. The dog stopped abruptly, nose lifting, then pushed forward toward faint chemical traces Jack recognized, the unique scent markers used in the broker's smuggling crates. Someone had passed through this region recently. Jack exchanged a look with Emily. "He's tracking them. This isn't just escape anymore. It's pursuit." They traveled through the night, resting only briefly in a rocky overhang. Emily treated Shadow's shoulder with gentle hands. The dog lay quietly beneath her touch, despite the sting. Jack watched them, two beings he never expected to protect but now couldn't imagine losing. Emily met his gaze, her voice a whisper. "You saved me tonight." "No," Jack said softly. "Shadow did." She smiled faintly. "You both did." By dawn, Jack rendezvoused with a small convoy approaching from the distant highway. The vehicles bore no military markings, only the stark black of federal operations. Agents emerged wearing tactical gear, their movements crisp and efficient. Leading them was Commander Ryan Hale of the FBI HRT, a tall man with bronze skin, close-cropped black hair, and eyes sharp as a hawk's. His expression conveyed a lifetime of high-risk operations and the quiet confidence of someone who had walked out of every one of them. "Mercer," Hale greeted. "Reed briefed us. You stirred up a hornet's nest." Jack gestured toward Shadow. "He can lead you to the broker." Hale knelt briefly, careful, respectful, to examine Shadow. "He's a fighter," he murmured. "Good. We'll need one." Hours later they moved into the mountains. The terrain grew steeper, rugged, lined with skeletal deadfall and patches of frozen soil. Shadow led the way, weaving through the underbrush with uncanny precision. At one point he halted, tail stiff, ears rotating toward a narrow crevice between rocks. Jack signaled silently. Agents formed a perimeter. The broker's men were hidden in a makeshift ridge camp, armed and desperate. The first firefight erupted with a thunderous crack of rifles echoing off stone. Snow exploded under gunfire. Agents advanced in disciplined formation, but what astonished them was Jack and Shadow working as one. Shadow darting ahead to flush enemy positions, Jack slipping between trees with lethal efficiency. A man lunged toward Emily's position, but Shadow intercepted him, knocking him backward before Jack disarmed him with a swift strike. The broker attempted escape down a narrow slope, but Shadow caught his scent instantly, bolting after him. Jack sprinted behind, boots pounding ice. They cornered the man near a ravine edge. The broker, a gaunt figure with slicked-back graying hair, expensive coat torn from the chase. His face carried the cold arrogance of someone who had enriched himself on global chaos. But now panic flickered in his dark eyes. "How? Are you alive?" he spat at Jack. Jack didn't answer. Shadow growled, stepping forward with bared teeth. HRT agents swarmed in moments later, securing the broker and his encrypted tablet, containing transaction logs, offshore accounts, and the final links proving corruption in military procurement chains. Hale clapped Jack's shoulder. "We couldn't have done this without you or that dog." For the first time in many years, Jack inhaled a breath free of guilt, free of erasure. Emily stood beside him, relief softening her features. Shadow pressed against Jack's leg, tail lifting slightly as if sensing victory's fragile warmth. In that frozen clearing, as the sky brightened behind the mountains, Jack Mercer finally felt vindicated. He was no longer a ghost. He was the man who hunted the truth and survived. The late summer light drifted softly across the Washington skyline, turning the marble government buildings gold as the sun lowered itself toward evening. The air felt strangely peaceful, too gentle almost, for a day that would rewrite the fate of two survivors who had fought their way back from silence. Jack Mercer stood before the Justice Department's towering facade, the reflection of the bronze doors shimmering faintly in his eyes. His broad shoulders rose and fell in a slow breath, as if he were learning again how to exist without the weight of pursuit pressing on him. Beside him, Shadow sat upright, posture regal and steady. The shepherd's black and tan coat gleamed in the fading light, his amber eyes calm now in a way Jack had not seen for months. No tension, no fear, just loyalty solid as stone. Inside the building, the hearing room carried a hum of tension. Men and women in tailored suits moved through the hallway. Prosecutors, federal investigators, and a scattering of military brass. Among them stood Deputy Attorney General Louise Carter, a tall, elegant woman in her early 50s with silver-streaked black hair pulled tightly into a bun. Her angular jaw and sharp green eyes gave the impression of someone carved from glass, resilient, polished, and unyielding. She had built her career fighting institutional corruption after watching her brother, a decorated soldier, be wrongfully discharged years earlier. That personal injustice had shaped her into the fierce advocate she was now, and made her the perfect ally in a case as dark as the broker's network. Louise greeted Jack with a rare, warm nod. "We're ready, and Mercer, today is your day." Her voice held both steel and reassurance. As Jack entered the chamber, Emily and Mason were already inside. Emily stood near the witness seating, petite, with her brown hair tied loosely, her face bright with something close to pride. Mason, tall and broad-featured, carried an air of guarded triumph. His once stern blue eyes softened when he spotted Jack. Months of fear, secrecy, and night-chased roads had led to this moment. The proceedings began with a series of presentations from the Justice Department. Evidence traced the broker's criminal reach through encrypted accounts, private contractors, and several high-ranking officials who had funneled classified information and funding into his operations. Every new file exposed another layer of betrayal. Shadow lay at Jack's feet, listening, sensing the gravity of human voices, but knowing somehow that this was victory. When Jack was asked to testify, he rose with quiet strength. He spoke clearly about the mission that had shattered his reality, about the order to erase evidence, and about the moment he realized the cleanup protocol included eliminating Shadow as well. His tone remained calm, steady, but beneath each word lay the raw truth of a man forced into exile by the very system he had served. Emily watched him with unhidden emotion, admiration mixed with sorrow for all he had endured. When asked whether he feared retaliation for speaking out, Jack glanced down at Shadow, who lifted his head with unwavering trust. "I fear nothing," Jack answered softly. "Not anymore." Applause broke out in the gallery, quiet at first, then rising. Even Louise Carter's hardened expression softened. By late afternoon, the hearing concluded. Arrest warrants had been issued for multiple officers. Several government contracts were frozen pending full review. And Jack Mercer, once declared dead, was publicly restored. Outside, the press gathered near the steps as Jack and Shadow emerged into the copper light of early evening. Mason joined them, carrying a small black case. He opened it silently and held it out to Jack. Inside lay the medal Jack had earned years ago, his SEAL K-9 Valor Commendation, stripped from his record the moment he was declared a liability. The medal gleamed softly against the velvet lining. Mason's voice lowered, rough with emotion. It was never theirs to take. Jack fastened the medal onto his uniform, one he hadn't worn with pride for a long time. Emily stepped beside him, brushing a stray hair from her cheek. "You deserve every honor they give you," she whispered. Shadow nudged her hand, earning a gentle scratch behind the ear. The celebration was brief. Jack had never been a man for crowds. Instead, the three of them slipped away to a quiet government courtyard shielded by tall maples. There, Emily shared her news that made Jack pause with unexpected emotion. "I'm opening a rehabilitation center," she said, "for canines that suffered trauma on deployment, a place where they can heal the right way. And I want you to be our lead advisor, you and Shadow." Jack's brows lifted slightly. "You're serious?" "Completely," Emily replied. "You understand these dogs better than anyone. You've lived what they've lived, and Shadow, well, he's proof that survival is possible." Mason crossed his arms, smiling faintly. "And someone needs to manage the military partnership. Apparently, that someone is me." Jack let out a breath that felt strangely like gratitude. For the first time since his world had fallen apart, a future was taking shape, one built not on secrecy or fear, but on purpose. As they walked toward the courtyard gates, Jack reached into his pocket and withdrew the official adoption papers for Shadow. Signed, approved, finalized that morning. He knelt in front of the shepherd, lifting the dog's face gently. "It's official," he murmured. "You're home, for good." Shadow's tail thumped once against the ground, eyes bright with understanding. Hours later, as the sun dipped into a horizon washed in orange and rose, Jack and Shadow stood alone on a quiet ridge overlooking the Potomac. The world felt still, as if holding its breath for them. The river shimmered in the dying light. Jack placed a hand on Shadow's head, the same hand that had once signaled commands in deserts, jungles, and mountains, now offering only peace. "They tried to erase us," he said softly, voice thick with meaning, "but we're still here, stronger than ever." Shadow pressed against him, tail swaying gently, the warmth of his loyalty grounding them both in the life they had reclaimed. Behind them, Emily and Mason approached at a distance, but Jack remained lost in the quiet, sacred moment. Two survivors, two warriors, and at last, two souls allowed to rest. Every story leaves a mark, but this one reminds us of something many people forget. No matter how many times life tries to silence you, erase you, or break you, your truth, your courage, and your loyalty can still rise again. Jack and Shadow survived betrayal, fear, and isolation because they held on to one thing the world could not take, their bond. And in our own daily lives, we face shadows too, moments when we feel overlooked, unheard, or underestimated. But like Jack, like Shadow, we push forward. We heal, we rebuild, we choose loyalty, love, and the courage to stand up again even when the world tries to push us down. That's the message of this story. You are stronger than the forces that try to erase you. Your voice matters, even when silence is forced upon you. And your loyalty to loved ones, to pets, to purpose, can become the light that leads you home. If this story moved you, inspired you, or gave you hope, then please help it reach others who might need the reminder too.